This is probably one of the closest songs we have to Savage Mode in the first one. So, it was really nice to see that they carried that old aesthetic and that they could still carry it, right? And not only that, but I was super impressed by the samples. And I think, 21 should go on a lot more samples, because if you look at a lot, there's definitely a lot of room for him there and like that sort of lane. So we'll have to see what goes on. And, I'm super impressed with production this year. As you said, the blinding was absolutely phenomenal. It was cinematic. You had so many different blends of sounds going into one production. And as you said, the Travis Scott vocals being blended in there as well.
But I think we have to really just, give Metro his flowers, just because he is, arguably the best trap producer of all time. He's up there with the Zaytovens of the industry.
Absolutely.
And what he did with this beat was fucking brilliant.
Absolutely.
To include that 1976, I think it was a Diana Ross instrumental. Yeah, a 1976 Diana Ross instrumental called I Thought It Took a Little Time. And the way that beat kind of just comes in, and we have the sound of like old film burning.
Yeah.
And just that contrast between something that's very playful and light mixed in with the heavy 808s that came in right after. It was the beautiful contrast of something that was peaceful but also very haunting. And I don't see many other producers kind of mixing these kinds of elements into the trap scene like Metro does. And that's why he is arguably the best trap producer of all time.
Absolutely. And he's someone that's going to be remembered. And all of his productions seem memorable, right? Like I'm sure I could have a whole episode about Metro Boomin beats, and it would just be story after story of like where was the first place I heard it and how much it slaps in the car.
You have King's Disease by Nas. You have Detroit 2
and Burden of Proof
by Big Sean, and Burden of Proof by Benny the Butcher.
Wow. Yeah, that's a crazy run. And each and every single one of them was a W for him. I say, listen, honestly, the weakest out of the three for me is Detroit 2. Mm-hmm. It's something that hasn't stuck with me for a while, but listen, the production on there was still fucking insane. King's Disease, I remember one really big W that we put on that album. We were recording in different cities at that point. We were still doing a audio podcast. I did that in Toronto. And the biggest thing that we said was, this album has incredible production. This album has incredible production, and it's super cinematic. And then after that, of course, you got The Alchemist. He produces Alfredo, but this guy's like, this guy's just a fucking monster, man. He's been collaborating with underground artists for years, and it's crazy because he is a big part of this underground blow up. So Lou, I want to say this: what was your favorite Hit-Boy beat of the year?
My favorite Hit-Boy of the year? That's fucking tough. Honestly, I think that it would have to be one of the beats on Burden of Proof, just because. It's a phenomenal album, and just what he was able to do with all those soul samples, it was really outside of his, zone of comfort. Because if you look at Detroit 2, that was more Hit-Boy doing what he's done in the past, where he's making these, kind of trap type beats where there's a lot of diverse drum patterns. Then on King's Disease, you got more of a minimalistic, jazzy type of approach. But on Burden of Proof is where we really saw him master his skills by using those soul samples and by just, forming excellence. And my favorite beat from Hit-Boy of the year would probably have to be New Streets or Burden of Proof, the title track.
Yeah,
what about you?
I wanted to hear Burden of Proof there. I would say Burden of Proof. I'm just a huge fan of that overall production, just because it makes me feel like I'm watching Goodfellas. That's
big time.
That's the type of vibe that I get into when I'm listening to that album, and a big part of that has to do with Hit-Boy. His stuff is always sounding flawless, and shout out to him for finally having his year, to kind of take the crown.
Yeah, because I mean, he would always make hits for like singles or just loosies off of albums. But, he wasn't known for being that producer that, did collab albums with other rappers and did it in a massive fucking way. And that's what he did here. And not only that, but he also promoted a lot of different styles throughout these different albums, right? He didn't stick to one type of aesthetic in terms of production.
Imagine a Drake and Hit-Boy album, a full Drake Hit-Boy album, especially with the type of bag that Hit-Boy's in right now. Wow, that would sound like on a BB King freestyle sort of vibe. Just a whole album full of knowledge.
But that's
and
the thing is, I don't want him to stop this run. I want him to keep going and just
Imagine Certified Lover Boy is all Hit-Boy. Imagine that's the type of surprise we get from Drake. I would. I don't know,
a Drake album without a Noah 40 Shabib beat. I don't know about that.
No, he could still enginear and co-exec. Like he could still do that.
He's always in his engineering bag.